Hey, I'm Jacob. I write and I do projects, usually under the name JPEG Bolton. Broadly, I'm interested in infrastructure and logistics. So like the core structures and processes that allow other structures and processes to exist. So specifically things like the internet, materially and virtually, things like global trade infrastructure, and closer to home, the services and things that just make cities good places to be. So things like public space, railways, that kind of thing. I'm really interested in how imbalances in these infrastructures, which are often quite hard to spot, can lead to imbalances in everybody's lives. So like access to healthcare, access to education. I'm also super interested in financialization. By that, I mean like the remodeling of services that should be public into services that are driven by profit, and the systemic inequalities and the slow forms of violence that this process enacts. So I make arts projects broadly about infrastructures. So Network Tourist Information Centre was a fictional tourist centre that involved guided tours of sites where the internet is concentrated. So these are basically just like massive energy intensive warehouses full of computers connected to your home and the entire planet through cables that run under the streets and under the sea. And in sort of like raising the sort of literacy of like being able to like see the internet was a way to kind of like open up a space to look at and think about like who has access to fast, cheap internet and who doesn't. And as services like healthcare and education and all these other things get moved online, what kind of power dynamics does that like bake into the civic fabric? I'm also really into maps and the power of maps as things that shape the way that we interact with places. So one thing that the history of colonialism has taught us is that controlling a map of a place is often actually a way to control the place itself. So another recent project was called Google Unmapped, and this was like a documentation of things that Google Maps had left out of the image of the city through comparing it to OpenStreetMap. And broadly, it was a reflection on like how the actual image of the city is financialized and how we're sort of pushed towards things that make us kind of spend money in particular places. I'm inspired by a lot of people and things, but some things I've found like super cool recently are autonomous infrastructures in the fight for indigenous land rights. So for example, people setting up this like not-for-profit DIY internet in a remote part of southern Mexico. And also the work and thinking of prison abolitionists who recognize that infrastructures and institutions contain power dynamics and ideologies such as racism. And that by thinking through how to like dismantle these structures, we actually think through like applicable practical ways to dismantle the ideologies themselves. I'm excited about this place of mine because it offers new ways to think about public space or like the publicness of space and to just to get more voices around the table in these sort of conversations. So working with young people, I'd like to dream up new ways of inhabiting the space that we have and recognizing it as ours. And I'd like to think about how, like, working together, we can develop new tools to make that happen, perhaps through a process of collective mapping, which I think can be a really powerful process.